I want to start by saying that I absolutely adore my baby cousin, Lily. She's not just family to me, she's one of my favorite people in the entire world. Honestly, I see her more as a little sister than a cousin. From the moment she was born, I've had this inexplicable bond with her. I'm the oldest cousin in our big, boisterous family, and there's a 2-decade age gap between us. Maybe it's because of that, or maybe it's just her sweet, clingy nature, but I've always felt this special connection to her. She's the type of kid who lights up any room she's in, curly hair, wide eyes, and a giggle that can make even the grumpiest person smile. So, to be clear, I love this little girl with all my heart. But recently, something happened that's made me question whether I handled a situation the right way, and it's been eating at me ever since. Let me set the scene a little. I'm 24 years old, and while I love my family, I don't get to see them as often as I'd like. I live out of state, and between work and just the general chaos of adult life, my visits home are pretty rare. Our family is huge, think grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins of all ages, and every gathering feels like a small wedding. It's loud, it's messy, and it's always full of drama. I usually enjoy these get-togethers because they're one of the few times I get to catch up with everyone and unwind. This time, though, things didn't exactly go as planned. A few weeks ago, my younger brother had his birthday party at my parents' house. It was one of those rare chances for me to relax and reconnect with everyone after a stressful year. I was looking forward to some good food, laughter, and maybe even a few hours of uninterrupted conversation with my cousins who are closer to my age. But of course, with Lily there, things were never going to be that simple. Lily, being 4 years old and the youngest in the family by a long shot, doesn't have any cousins her own age to play with. Naturally, whenever I'm around, she clings to me like glue. And I don't mind, most of the time, I enjoy it. She's at that adorable age where everything is an adventure, and her imagination is endless. So, as soon as I walked into the house, she ran to me with her arms wide open, shouting my name like I was some kind of celebrity. It was the cutest thing, and I couldn't help but scoop her up and give her a big hug. For the first hour or so, everything was fine. Lily wanted to play, so I followed her around, indulging her little games and pretending to be a princess trapped in a tower while she rescued me. It was sweet, and honestly, it felt good to just forget about adult responsibilities for a while. But as the evening wore on, I started to get hungry. The smell of all the food, biryani, samosas, kebabs, was wafting through the air, and my stomach was growling. I told Lily I needed to take a break to eat, but she wasn't having it. She begged me to stay with her, tugging at my hand and giving me those puppy dog eyes that are impossible to resist. Eventually, I compromised. I sat her down with a plate of food and fed her myself. It's a thing with Lily, she's super picky about who feeds her. If it's not her mom, my mom, or me, she flat out refuses to eat. So there I was, spooning rice into her little mouth while she chattered on about her imaginary friends. It was cute, but by the time she finished, I was starving. After making sure she was settled, I handed her off to my grandma, who was sitting nearby. I figured Lily would be fine with her for a while, maybe she'd nap or go play in the garden. I grabbed a plate of food and finally sat down to enjoy the meal. For the first time that evening, I was able to relax and join in on the conversations around me. I thought everything was under control. But of course, that peace didn't last long. A few minutes later, as I was finally starting to feel like I could enjoy myself, I heard a loud crash that made the entire room go silent for a split second before gasps and murmurs filled the air. My heart sank. I immediately turned toward the dining area, and what I saw made my stomach twist into knots. There was Lily, standing frozen in the middle of what can only be described as absolute chaos. The tablecloth had been yanked off the table, taking with it a cascade of dishes, glasses, and serving bowls. It was a disaster. Plates of food lay shattered on the floor, their contents smeared across the tiles. Glasses had toppled over, spilling water and juice everywhere. Even the dessert, this beautiful trifle that someone had painstakingly layered, was now a sticky mess dripping onto the rug. It looked like a tornado had ripped through the dining area, and at the center of it all was Lily, her little face crumpling as she realized what had just happened. The sound of her wailing cut through the air, high-pitched and heart-wrenching. Her tiny hands were balled into fists at her sides, and her whole body trembled with the force of her sobs. I felt a pang of guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't been watching her. Maybe if I'd stayed with her instead of assuming she'd be fine, none of this would have happened. I stood up quickly, my plate forgotten, and made my way over, weaving through the stunned onlookers who had gathered around to take in the scene. Lily's mom, my aunt, was already there, and her frustration was palpable. She was crouched down, trying to gather the mess while simultaneously scolding Lily in a sharp, scathing tone. "What were you thinking, Lily? Look at this mess. Why would you pull the tablecloth? Do you know how much work went into all of this?" Her voice rose with every word, and Lily only cried harder, her little shoulders shaking as tears streamed down her cheeks. It was clear she was scared and overwhelmed, and honestly, who could blame her? She was just a 4-year-old who had made a mistake, and now it felt like the whole room was staring at her like she'd committed some heinous crime. The whole scene was pure chaos. My other relatives were murmuring amongst themselves, some of them shaking their heads and clicking their tongues like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. A few people bent down to help clean up the mess, but most of them just stood there, watching like it was a live soap opera. I felt rooted to the spot for a moment, unsure of what to do. A wave of emotions crashed over me, guilt, worry, frustration, but the strongest feeling of all was this desperate urge to step in and shield Lily from all the judgment and yelling. I walked over, my footsteps quick but hesitant, unsure of how to de-escalate the situation without making things worse. As soon as my aunt noticed me, she turned her attention away from Lily and locked eyes with me, her expression sharp enough to cut glass. The frustration in her face morphed into something closer to anger, and the moment she opened her mouth, I knew what was coming. "Why weren't you watching her?" she snapped, her voice low but laced with fury. There was no softness, no understanding, just blame. Her tone hit me like a slap, and for a second, I couldn't even process what she was saying. "You know she follows you everywhere. You should have been keeping an eye on her." Her words were punctuated by the pointed jab of her finger, as if to hammer the accusation home. I froze, completely caught off guard. My first instinct was to defend myself, but the intensity of her frustration left me speechless for a moment. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. Yes, I had been playing with Lily earlier, but I wasn't her babysitter. She wasn't my child. And yet, the way my aunt was looking at me made it clear that she thought all of this was somehow my fault. I felt my face grow hot as the weight of everyone's eyes fell on me, their silence thick with judgment. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "but Lily is not my responsibility. I've been playing with her all evening, but I thought it was okay to take a break and eat. She's your daughter, not mine." My aunt's face turned red, and she looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead, she just stormed off. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could feel the judgmental stares of some of my relatives. I tried to shrug it off, but inside, I felt sick. Had I been too harsh? Should I have just apologized and taken the blame to keep the peace? The aftermath has been even worse. My family group chats have been blowing up with passive-aggressive messages about respect and how the younger generation doesn't value family. My mom and grandparents have been getting calls from relatives complaining about how disrespectful I was to my aunt. Even my mom, who usually has my back, told me I could have handled the situation more delicately. Now, I'm left questioning everything. Was I wrong to stand up for myself? Should I have just sucked it up and apologized to keep the peace? I love Lily, and I'll always be there for her, but I also feel like it's unfair to expect me to take on full responsibility for her just because I'm her favorite cousin. I didn't mean to cause any drama, but now I'm wondering if I handled things poorly. Am I the asshole here? Or was I justified in standing my ground? Update. Hey, everyone. I'm back with an update, and I want to thank all of you for your incredible support and advice after my original post. I can't tell you how much it helped to have people validate my feelings and remind me that I wasn't completely off base. After what felt like an emotional roller coaster, things have finally calmed down, for the most part, anyway, and I've been able to reflect on everything that happened. So, here's the rundown of how everything unfolded. After the whole incident at my brother's birthday party, my aunt wasted no time ramping up the drama to levels I didn't even think were possible. I honestly believe that, after a night or two to cool off, she'd let the whole thing go or, at the very least, tone it down to a simmer. But I was so wrong. Instead, it was like she took the situation as an opportunity to stage a one-woman crusade against me. The calls to my mom started almost immediately. Long, drawn-out voicemails flooded her phone, each one more dramatic than the last. I listened to one of them, and it was honestly laughable how over the top she was. She went on and on about how I had disrespected her, how I had no regard for family values, and how I was spoiled because my mom always defended me. It was clear she wasn't looking for a resolution, she wanted an audience for her outrage. But the voicemails weren't enough. She took things to the family group chat, which, let me tell you, is the worst place to air grievances. It's a huge group chat that includes all my aunts, uncles, cousins, and even my grandparents. It's supposed to be a space for sharing updates, family photos, and holiday plans, not for stirring up drama. But my aunt decided to use it as her personal soapbox. She started posting those classic, passive-aggressive messages that everyone knows are aimed at a specific person, even though she didn't mention me by name. Stuff like, some people in this family really need to learn their place, and, respect is such a basic thing. I don't know why it's so hard for some people to show it. It was exhausting, to say the least. What made it even worse was how relentless she was about it. Every time my mom or someone else tried to shift the conversation back to something neutral, like asking about plans for an upcoming family event, my aunt would swoop back in with another snide remark. She'd say things like, well, I wouldn't expect certain people to show up, considering how they behave, or, maybe if people focused on their responsibilities instead of acting like victims, things wouldn't be such a mess. The audacity of it all was almost impressive, but mostly, it just made me want to mute the group chat permanently. The thing is, I'm not someone who enjoys conflict. I've always been more of a peacemaker in the family, the kind of person who'd rather let things slide than escalate a situation. But this was different. This wasn't just a minor disagreement or a misunderstanding, my aunt was actively trying to paint me as the villain in front of our entire extended family. And after a while, it started to get to me. Even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, the constant barrage of criticism and judgment made me second-guess myself. I found myself wondering if maybe I should apologize, just to make the whole thing go away. Was it really worth all this drama over a single incident? Maybe swallowing my pride and saying sorry would have been the easiest solution. Thankfully, my mom wasn't having any of it. She's the type of person who will go to the ends of the earth to protect her kids, and she wasn't about to let my aunt drag me down like this. From the moment my aunt started her campaign of blame, my mom made it clear that she had my back. She sat me down and said, "You did nothing wrong, and I'm not letting her turn this into a blame game." She told me that my aunt's behavior wasn't about me, it was about her own inability to take responsibility for what happened. My mom reminded me that I had every right to stand my ground and not let my aunt guilt-trip me into apologizing for something that wasn't my fault. Hearing those words from her was like a lifeline. As much as I try to be confident in my decisions, the truth is, the sheer amount of backlash I was getting had started to wear me down. It's hard not to feel like the bad guy when someone is so determined to paint you that way, especially when it's someone in your own family. But my mom's unwavering support helped me see the situation clearly. She pointed out that if I gave in and apologized, it would only reinforce my aunt's belief that she could scapegoat me whenever things didn't go her way. And then, on Sunday, my mom decided she'd had enough of the endless drama. She's not the kind of person to sit back and let things fester, especially when it comes to her family. So, she marched over to my aunt's house to confront her directly. From what I've heard, and trust me, Carl didn't skimp on the details, it was an absolute showdown. My mom is a straight shooter and has no patience for petty behavior, so she wasn't about to sugarcoat anything. She didn't just address the chaos from my brother's birthday party, she took the opportunity to lay everything out on the table. Years of frustration, unresolved tensions, and unspoken grievances all came pouring out, and my aunt had no choice but to listen. My mom started with the immediate issue, the way my aunt had tried to blame me for Lily's accident and had subsequently dragged me through the mud in the family group chat. She made it clear that while I love Lily and always try to help out, the responsibility for looking after her ultimately lies with her parents. My mom pointed out how ridiculous it was for my aunt to expect me to take on a parental role at a family gathering when I was supposed to be relaxing and celebrating my brother's birthday. From there, my mom transitioned into a broader critique of my aunt's behavior. She called her out for being overly controlling, for pushing her responsibilities onto other people, and for her complete inability to let go of even the smallest perceived slight. But my mom didn't stop there. She also addressed the elephant in the room. My aunt's husband, from what I understand, has been more or less absent from both the parenting and household responsibilities. According to Carl, my mom didn't mince words about how my aunt has been left to shoulder the burden of parenting alone and how that frustration has clearly been spilling over into her relationships with the rest of the family. It wasn't a polite or diplomatic conversation, it was the kind of no-holds-barred confrontation that leaves everyone stunned into silence. Carl later told me it was like watching someone set off fireworks in a minefield. Every word was an explosion, and by the time my mom was done, there was no doubt that she had made her point. The aftermath of that conversation revealed a lot about my aunt that I hadn't been fully aware of. It turns out she's been having issues with nearly everyone in the family for years. She has this pattern of clashing with people over the smallest things and holding on to grudges like they're priceless treasures. Carl told me she's the type to bring up things that happened years ago, even if they've been resolved or were never a big deal to begin with. It's like she collects grievances the way other people collect stamps, meticulously and with a strange sense of pride. Apparently, it's become a running joke among the cousins that every family gathering will inevitably end with my aunt sulking in a corner or picking a fight with someone over something trivial. The more I learned, the more it became clear that the incident at the birthday party was just the tip of the iceberg. My aunt's behavior has been escalating over the years, and she's burned so many bridges within the family that people have started to tread carefully around her, just to avoid triggering her. It's exhausting to think about, and I'm honestly amazed that I hadn't noticed it sooner. Then again, I've been away for work most of the time, so I guess I've been spared from the worst of it. But here's where things get even more complicated. Carl told me that a lot of my aunt's behavior stems from her experiences with Lily's health issues when she was a baby. Lily had a rough start in life. There were some serious health scares that left my aunt constantly on edge. Those experiences shaped her into a textbook helicopter mom. She's hypervigilant to the point of being suffocating, and while I understand that her intentions come from a place of love and concern, the result has been stifling for Lily. From what Carl told me, Lily barely gets to leave the house unless it's to visit family, and even then, my aunt is always hovering over her like a shadow. She doesn't let Lily play with kids outside the family, and she's so protective that even Lily's preschool is run by my aunt's brother. And when it comes to school, forget it. My aunt has been known to pull Lily out of class on a whim, usually because she doesn't trust anyone else to look after her properly. It's no wonder Lily is so attached to me and my mom. When she's at our house, it's one of the only times she gets to feel like a regular kid. We let her run around, play, and just be herself without constantly looking over her shoulder. It breaks my heart to think about how limited her world is because of my aunt's fears. I know my aunt loves Lily deeply, but the way she's handling things is only going to hurt her in the long run. Lily deserves the chance to explore, make friends, and grow up without feeling like she's trapped in a bubble. While my mom was busy confronting my aunt, I decided to take some time to decompress. My brother and I went to the beach for the day, and it was exactly what I needed. We spent hours just hanging out, eating ice cream, and building sandcastles like we used to when we were kids. It was nostalgic and peaceful, and it reminded me of all the good memories we've had growing up. After all the stress of the past few days, it was a relief to just laugh and enjoy each other's company. It also felt like a small way to make up for the fact that his birthday party had turned into such a chaotic mess. On Monday, things were much calmer. I spent the day at home with my cousins, and my grandma even managed to bring Lily over so I could say goodbye before heading back to my city. Apparently, getting Lily out of my aunt's house was a battle in itself, but I'm so grateful my grandma made the effort. Spending those last few hours with Lily was bittersweet. She's such a bright, happy little soul, and I hate that I don't get to see her more often. We played together, and I made sure to give her lots of hugs and kisses before she left. I could tell she didn't want to go, and honestly, neither did I. Now for the funny part. Shortly after I posted my original story, Carl called me with his usual sarcastic sense of humor. His opening line: "Breaking out of the prison, are we? Right behind you, sis." He's been cracking jokes about the whole situation ever since, and honestly, it's been such a relief to have someone lighten the mood. He's one of those people who can find humor in anything, and it's exactly what I needed to stop taking everything so seriously. As for my aunt, she's still trying to stir the pot, but it's not working as well as she probably hoped. Once the truth came out about how much she's been micromanaging Lily and clashing with other family members, people started siding with me. It became clear to everyone that her accusations about me neglecting Lily were completely baseless. Everyone knows how much I adore that little girl and how much effort I've put into being there for her when I can. The family drama has more or less settled, and most of my relatives have reassured me that I didn't do anything wrong. After all the advice and support I received, I've decided not to apologize. At first, I thought about apologizing just to keep the peace, but my aunt has blown this so far out of proportion that I don't see the point. She's made it clear that she's more interested in being right than actually resolving the issue, and I'm not going to play into that. My mom has been a rock through all of this, even telling my aunt to grow up and stop spamming the family group chat with her drama. Yes, those were her exact words. My mom is a legend. At this point, I'm putting the whole situation behind me. I'm back in my city now, ready to dive back into work, and I'm feeling at peace with how everything played out. Almost everyone in the family has come around to my side, and I'm moving forward with a clear conscience. Thank you again to everyone who helped me navigate this. I truly appreciate it.